A gaping black maw burst forth from the ground, its speed astonishing. Under the terrified gazes of the onlookers, it engulfed Song Zhan's body in one swift motion. Hiss! As Song Zhan was swallowed, his figure vanished completely. In the air, only a strange mass of writhing black light remained, radiating an ominous, unsettling power. The heaven-devouring maw? After a moment of stunned silence, someone finally recovered their senses and screamed in disbelief. They had witnessed Song Zhan unleash this fearsome technique before, but never could they have imagined that Lin Dong could wield it as well. How is that even possible? A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Every pair of eyes was filled with utter disbelief. This martial art, a secret of the Taodai sect, belonged solely to them. How could Lin Dong possibly possess it? What's going on? Qing Feng, standing atop a massive boulder, was equally perplexed. His gaze locked onto the wriggling black light. Since Song Zhan was devoured, his presence had all but vanished, as though he had been consumed by the abyss itself. Lan Ying's beautiful face mirrored the same shock. Her brows furrowed slightly as she murmured, "Lin Dong's heaven-devouring maw appears identical to Song Zhan's, but there's something elusive about the energy it emits. It's likely related to how he forcibly took Song Zhan's power of swallowing earlier. How could Lin Dong steal Song Zhan's power? Even we wouldn't be able to pull off such a feat," Qing Feng muttered to himself. "Just because we can't do it doesn't mean others can't." "Lin Dong is no ordinary person," Lan Ying replied. This time, Qing Feng didn't argue. Lin Dong had already forced Song Zhan into a corner, proving his strength. If he could truly defeat Song Zhan, there would be no more than 5 people on the Nirvana gold ranking capable of surpassing him. That meant Lin Dong was now almost guaranteed a spot in the top 5 of the 100 Dynasty War. For someone from a low-tier dynasty to reach such heights, his prowess was terrifying indeed. Boom! Not far from the chaotic battleground, a figure was sent flying backward in a pitiful state. He barely managed to steady himself half a meter in front of a giant rock before the terrifying power surging from within him shattered the stone behind him. A muffled grunt escaped his lips. He was clearly injured. "That's all you've got?" A ghostly figure appeared in midair, looking down at the retreating man with a faint smile. His handsome face bore a mocking expression. The figure, of course, was Little Mink, while the man who had been sent flying was Song Quebec. From the very beginning of their battle, Little Mink had held the upper hand. Song K had long given up on winning and was merely trying to hold Little Mink at bay. Through their exchanges, Song K had realized that Little Mink's strength exceeded his own by a margin. On top of that, Little Mink's energy was eerie, and his methods were ruthless and cunning. Defeating such an opponent on his own was impossible. When Song K heard Little Mink's mocking words, his face turned ashen. Yet all he could do was swallow his frustration. "Once my elder brother finishes off that brat, we'll team up and take this guy down, no matter how strange he is." Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Song K shot a glance toward Lin Dong's battleground. What he saw made the vicious expression on his face freeze in an instant. He looked like a clown, his expression twisted into something utterly absurd. "Looks like your last hope is gone," Little Mink teased with a smirk. "Do you really think that brat can trap my brother? You're delusional." Song K shouted angrily, but the flash of panic in his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. Little Mink, however, paid him no mind. His gaze was fixed on the black light surrounding Lin Dong and Song Zhan. Even he was surprised by how quickly Lin Dong had managed to push Song Zhan into such a desperate situation. At the same time, the other combatants, including Xueying, had all noticed the disturbance. Their faces paled visibly. "He's incredible." In stark contrast to Xueying and his group's ashen expressions, Lu Bai and the others were brimming with joy and astonishment. It took them a moment before they could manage to voice their thoughts. The battle between Lin Dong and Song Zhan had been full of twists and turns. From being completely suppressed at the start, Lin Dong had now firmly gained the upper hand. The once dominant Song Zhan was now in a truly miserable state. As for Lin Dong, he seemed oblivious to the multitude of shocked gazes around him. His attention was solely focused on the writhing black light in midair. While others might not know, He was well aware that the energy hidden within wasn't just the power of swallowing, but the true power of devouring. To avoid revealing the existence of the devouring ancestral talisman, he had intentionally disguised it as an attack resembling the power of swallowing. The two powers were similar enough in nature that imitating it had been relatively easy. Boom, boom. Under Lin Dong's intense gaze, the black light surrounding Song Zhen suddenly began to tremble violently, as if something inside was desperately struggling to break free. Lin Dong's eyes remained cold, and with a single thought, the black light writhed even more intensely. The power of devouring within it surged madly. Bang, bang, bang. From within the black light, the sound of furious attacks could be heard. Song Zhen's enraged roars echoed faintly, evidence of his growing desperation. Hearing Song Zhen's roars, many in the crowd had their expressions shift slightly. There was a distinct sense of hopelessness in his voice. Could it be that Lin Dong's heaven-devouring maw was truly so formidable that even Song Zhen couldn't break free? Fist imprints appeared repeatedly on the surface of the black light, and everyone could feel the frenzied energy of the person trapped inside. Bang! To his credit, Song Zhen's strength was truly remarkable. Even in such dire circumstances, he managed to tear open cracks in the seemingly impenetrable black light through sheer force of will. The cracks rapidly spread and finally shattered completely. A flash of light shot out like lightning, and Song Zhen, pale and gasping, hovered in midair. His expression was twisted with a hatred that resembled that of a vengeful spirit. "He's out." A collective gasp erupted from the surrounding crowd as they watched Song Zhen break free from the black light. Both Song Ke and Xuewen, along with their companions, breathed a sigh of relief. "Looks like you were wrong after all," Song Ke sneered at Little Mink. "Is that so?" Little Mink raised an eyebrow, a playful smile creeping onto his face. Seeing that smile made Song Ke's heart sink. At the same time, Song Zhen, who had just escaped the black light, fixed his venomous gaze on Lin Dong. The malice in his expression was beyond words. Without a word, Song Zhen launched himself forward. His vicious palm strike came crashing down toward Lin Dong's head with fierce momentum. Yet, Lin Dong remained motionless. He slowly lifted his gaze, his expression indifferent as he looked at Song Zhen's snarling face. Calmly, he raised his hand to meet the incoming palm. Slap! A sharp sound rang out, but the anticipated clash of power never came. Song Zhen's fierce palm strike completely dissipated the moment it connected with Lin Dong's hand. "Do you still have any strength left in you?" Lin Dong asked, his voice calm as he looked into Song Zhen's fear-filled eyes. He saw terror flooding from within, and then he smiled. In that instant, a terrifying power erupted from his palm. Crack! The sound of bones snapping reverberated across the rocky battlefield, piercing through the silence. Every murmur halted, and all eyes snapped to the center of the scene. In the middle of the field, two figures stood in stark contrast. Song Zhen hung in midair, his right hand extended, but it was gripped tightly by Lin Dong. The source of the cracking sound was unmistakable. Whose bones had broken? This question flickered through everyone's mind. They knew the battle's outcome was about to be decided, so no one dared to blink. Heh. In the deathly stillness, Lin Dong's tall figure suddenly moved. A cold smile crept across his face, filled with a murderous intent. With that smile, Lin Dong took a sharp step forward. His hand, clutching Song Zhen's wrist like an iron claw, shook violently. With sheer force, he swung Song Zhen into the air. Then, under the shocked gazes of the onlookers, smashed him brutally against a large stone. Boom! The dull thud of flesh hitting rock echoed throughout the battlefield, making hearts race. The massive boulder shattered into countless pieces, sending debris flying everywhere. Splurt! The terrifying impact crashed through Song Zhen's body without mercy. His internal organs felt as though they had shifted, and blood spurted from his mouth. Boom! Before Song Zhen's body could even hit the ground, Lin Dong reappeared, his expression cold and his black eyes brimming with an icy fury. Swoosh! Lin Dong's grip on Song Zhen's wrist remained firm as he yanked him forward, swinging his body like a ragdoll. Without hesitation, Lin Dong hurled him toward the surrounding boulders with violent force. Bang, bang, bang. The scene became a storm of exploding rocks as Lin Dong relentlessly swung Song Zhan, using him as a weapon to smash through the giant stones in his path. Hiss. Around the battlefield, everyone froze in place, their movements halted. They could only watch in stunned silence as Song Zhan, utterly powerless in Lin Dong's grip, was smashed again and again. Cold gasps filled the air as they stared, eyes wide with shock. It was hard for them to believe that Song Zhan, a top-tier fighter from one of the 10 great dynasties and a recipient of the Taodai sect's inheritance, had been defeated so miserably by Lin Dong. Gulp. Qingfeng swallowed hard, his throat dry. His gaze shifted between the bloodied and barely conscious Song Zhan and the still calm Lin Dong. A chill ran from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. This guy was terrifying. Song Zhan has lost. Lan Ning sighed softly, her expression complicated. She could sense Song Zhan's fading strength. She couldn't understand why he had suddenly lost all ability to resist, but it was clear that Lin Dong had used some strange method, one even she found frightening. The battlefield fell into a tense silence. Shui Ying and his companions were left gaping, their faces growing paler by the second. The outcome was beyond anything they had anticipated. They could not fathom how Song Zhan had been defeated, and in such a humiliating manner, no less. Even more shocking was the fact that Song Zhan had been crushed by a mere 4th Nirvana stage cultivator from a low-tier dynasty. Is that guy really that strong? Shui Ying and the others looked on in horror at Lin Dong, who was still swinging Song Zhan's body like a weapon. The sheer brutality of it sent shivers down their spines. Big brother. Song Ke and Song Ba were both shaken by the sight. They snapped out of their shock, their faces twisting with rage. In a flash, they both leaped forward to rescue their brother. I've played with you long enough. Time to end this. But just as Song Ke made his move, a ghostly figure appeared in front of him. The handsome face that now blocked his path bore a faint smile, causing Song Ke's pupils to shrink. Swoosh. Little Mink leaned forward, his body flashing towards Song Quebec. His hand, radiating a deep violet black light, seemed to transform into a dark claw. With a sharp sound, it tore through the air. Before Song Ke could react, that cold, deathly hand had already pressed firmly against his chest. Splurt. Song Ke's body froze, and in the next instant, he was sent flying backward, blood spraying from his mouth. He crashed heavily to the ground, his fate uncertain. Second brother. Song Ba, who had taken a few steps forward, was horrified by the scene. Celestial demon transformation. Heavenly demon claw. Before Song Ba could even finish shouting, a low, ferocious roar filled with murderous intent erupted behind him. An overwhelming force of wind surged toward him, enveloping him completely. Feeling the terrifying force surging behind him, Song Ba's expression drastically changed. He quickly turned around, gathering brilliant golden light with desperate speed, which formed into a thick, golden shield in the blink of an eye. Clang! The shield barely materialized when a massive black paw, radiating with violent energy, slammed into it with unstoppable momentum. Clang! The impact sent a terrifying shockwave rippling through the air, the black light raging wildly. Song Ba's horrified eyes widened as cracks began to spread rapidly across the surface of the golden shield. The cracks quickly multiplied, reaching their limit within seconds. With a thunderous bang, the shield exploded into pieces. Boom! The shattered shield left Song Ba completely defenseless. The black paw surged forward and viciously struck him, driving his entire body deep into the ground. The earth caved in, forming huge fissures, and Song Ba was buried in the depths of the crevice. Thud! A hulking figure, like a demon god, landed at the edge of the crevice. With blood staining his body from various wounds, Little Yin wiped the blood from his face, his eyes filled with a savage fury. He plunged his arm into the ground and pulled out the unconscious Song Ba by the neck. The surrounding crowd watched in stunned silence. In just a matter of minutes, 2 of the 3 demons of the Song clan had fallen. No, perhaps all 3. Eyes quickly darted to Lin Dong's battlefield. Dust and debris filled the air, and every last boulder had been smashed to pieces by Lin Dong, who had used none other than Song Zhan's own body as a weapon. SHFF. Amidst the swirling dust, a figure slowly emerged. The faint sound of footsteps made many hearts tighten with unease. Finally, Lin Dong stepped out from the haze, his tall figure unscathed, a faint, indifferent smile on his face. His hand, covered in blood, dragged behind him a twisted, broken body, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. As Lin Dong emerged from the dust, he flung the mangled body into the center of the battlefield as if discarding trash. Thud. The heavy thud of the body hitting the ground resonated like a blow to everyone's heart, causing a collective shudder. Was this really Song Zhan, the leader of the 3 demons of the Song clan? All around the rocky field, people stared at the bloody, mutilated body and then at the smile on Lin Dong's face. A bone-chilling fear crept into their hearts. This guy, his methods were far too ruthless to have beaten a 5th Nirvana stage expert into such a wretched state. Want to keep fighting? Lin Dong raised his head and smiled at Xueying and his pale-faced companions. Lin Dong's smile was friendly, but to Xueying and the others, it looked like the smile of a devil. Their faces turned deathly white, and any fighting spirit they had left utterly crumbled upon seeing the half-dead, bloodied body Lin Dong had tossed out. If you don't want to fight, hand over your Nirvana seals and leave. Xueying and his group exchanged conflicted glances, but eventually, their expressions dimmed with defeat. They knew that this time, they had completely lost. Lin Dong and his group won. On the boulder, Lanning exhaled deeply, her beautiful eyes reflecting a mix of emotions as she whispered softly. The 3 demons of the Song clan had been defeated. Lin Dong and his companions would undoubtedly secure their place on the Nirvana Gold ranking, becoming some of the most brilliant and dazzling figures in this ancient battlefield. Lan Ying looked up toward the towering 100 Dynasties mountain that pierced the clouds. She could imagine the shock this outcome would cause among the super sects that were watching the battles unfold. The atmosphere around the rocky battlefield was eerily quiet. Even the air itself seemed to thicken and congeal, a metallic scent of blood permeating the area. The 3 demons of the Song clan had been completely crushed. As everyone stared at the 3 defeated and battered figures, they all knew that the outcome of this astonishing confrontation had been decided. Under the silent and watchful eyes of the crowd, Lin Dong slowly stepped forward, coming to a stop before the fallen Song Zhan. He crouched down, grabbing Song Zhan's hand, where a violet gold Nirvana seal faintly shimmered. Many eyes around the battlefield gleamed with greed. Anyone who possessed that seal would earn the right to ascend to the Nirvana Gold ranking. However, despite their covetous looks, no one dared make a move. After all, even the brutal and formidable 3 demons of the Song clan had fallen at Lin Dong's hands. Which of the ordinary fighters here would dare to challenge him? Lin Dong, you've made an enemy of the heavenly demon dynasty. You're courting death. I may not be able to deal with you in this ancient space, but once we leave, the power of the heavenly demon dynasty will crush you into dust. Song Zhan, though horribly beaten, still clung to life. His voice was weak and filled with venomous hatred as he glared at Lin Dong, gasping for breath. Lin Dong's expression remained cold and indifferent. He ignored Song Zhan's threats, gripping his hand tightly. Without hesitation, Lin Dong placed his own palm over Song Zhan's. As light began to flicker, he unceremoniously absorbed the violet gold Nirvana seal from Song Zhan's hand. Buzz. As the violet gold Nirvana seal transferred to Lin Dong, the golden glow of his original Nirvana seal intensified, radiating a brilliant light. The seal's glow grew stronger and stronger until it was completely transformed into a deep violet gold hue. By this point, Lin Dong had truly secured his place on the Nirvana Gold ranking. Lin Dong, you just wait. Once we leave the ancient space, I will make sure you have nowhere to hide. Song Zhan, his face twisted with rage and covered in blood, screamed furiously. However, he had no strength left to fight, so all he could do was roar in anger, his eyes filled with venomous hatred. Lin Dong narrowed his eyes at Song Zhan's outburst, and the latter's roaring came to an abrupt halt. From Lin Dong's gaze, Song Zhan sensed a real killing intent. You've reminded me many times that I should cut the weeds and dig up the roots. If I don't follow your advice, you might be disappointed, Lin Dong said with a faint smile, though it was chillingly cold. Swoosh. Without giving Song Zhan any time to react, Lin Dong's hand tightened. The heaven crocodile bone spear appeared, transforming into a flash of cold light as it shot ruthlessly towards Song Zhan's throat. The cold gleam rapidly enlarged in Song Zhan's eyes, which were filled with horror. He hadn't expected Lin Dong to disregard his status as a member of a super dynasty and directly aim to kill him. Yet no matter how terrified Song Zhan was, he had no strength to resist Lin Dong's attack. All he could do was stare in terror at the deadly cold light closing in. Ding! Just as the spear tip was about to pierce Song Zhan's throat, Lin Dong's pupils suddenly shrank. A brilliant beam of light tore through the air and collided with the spear tip at lightning speed. The force was so powerful that it knocked the bone spear off its trajectory. Swish! The spear narrowly missed Song Zhan's face, leaving a deep gash and tearing a huge trench dozens of meters long into the ground. Lin Dong glanced indifferently at Song Zhan, who was clutching his face and screaming in agony. He then lifted his gaze, his tone icy. This is a grudge between us and the heavenly demon dynasty. I wonder which friend is planning to interfere. Swoosh swoosh. All eyes instantly shifted to a towering ancient tree not far away. There, 3 figures slowly emerged. Leading the trio was a young man in white. On his white robe, there appeared to be a symbol of a rising sun. He was tall and extremely handsome, exuding a unique and commanding aura with his hands behind his back. Behind him stood 2 other men, both appearing languid. They wore similar robes, each adorned with the same sun symbol, suggesting they belonged to the same dynasty. That's Qin Tian from the Tianyuan dynasty? As the trio appeared, a wave of shock rippled through the crowd. From their reactions, Lin Dong could tell how revered and awe-inspiring Qin Tian was. The Tianyuan dynasty? Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly, and his expression became more serious. Among the 10 super dynasties, the Tianyuan dynasty was ranked first. Even Qin Tian was drawn to this? On a distant boulder, Lan Ying's eyebrows furrowed, her eyes filled with apprehension. Friend, Song Zhan has already lost. I think it might be better if you leave a bit of room for retreat, don't you think? Qin Tian smiled faintly at Lin Dong, his tone calm. Qin Tian carried himself with an air of nobility, his words exuding a natural authority that made him seem trustworthy. However, though his words seemed like a suggestion, Lin Dong couldn't detect any room for negotiation. It was more like a casual command. Lin Dong's eyes flickered as he gripped the bone spear. Although he didn't appreciate Qin Tian's tone, he didn't want to provoke unnecessary conflict. The Tianyuan dynasty held the top spot among the super dynasties, and their strength was undoubtedly formidable. Collect the Nirvana seals, Lin Dong said calmly, glancing toward Little Mink and the others. Hearing this, Little Mink lazily cast a glance at Qin Tian and his companions. Without a word, he turned to retrieve the Nirvana seals from Song Ke and the others. Friends, would you be willing to spare this step for the sake of the Tianyuan dynasty and me, Qin Tian? After all, obtaining the violet gold Nirvana seal wasn't easy for them. Qin Tian's eyes flashed as he spoke, seemingly pondering the situation. His words caused the surrounding crowd to fall into a brief silence. In this battlefield, it was perfectly normal for the victors to claim the Nirvana seals of the defeated, and no one would consider it excessive. It was simply the spoils of victory. However, though everyone knew this, the one speaking now was the leader of the strongest dynasty in the ancient battlefield, so no one dared to voice any objections. Lu Bai and his group also looked a bit uneasy. They hesitated for a moment before turning their eyes to Lin Dong, waiting for his decision. Under the watchful gaze of the crowd, Lin Dong's expression remained calm, his eyes devoid of anger. He turned to look at the ancient tree and spoke in a flat tone. If it were us who had lost, do you think Song Zhan would show us mercy and not take our Nirvana seals? The thought of sparing us? They wouldn't even leave us alive. This sentiment was undoubtedly shared by many onlookers. Qin Tian, still standing high above, looked down at Lin Dong with a calm smile, his hands clasped behind his back. Although Song Zhan can be quite overbearing, I'm sure he would act reasonably. Bullshit, someone muttered under their breath. That was a statement no one would believe, even a child. Lin Dong shook his head with a smile, clearly finding Qin Tian's words amusing. He decided not to engage further, and instead turned to Lu Bai and the others, waving his hand. Go ahead, claim your spoils. On the ancient tree, Qin Tian sighed softly and shook his head. Swoosh. At that moment, a figure behind Qin Tian let out a strange laugh and shot forward like a flash of light. In an instant, they appeared in front of Lin Dong, fingers glowing with a cold gleam, ready to strike at Lin Dong's forehead without hesitation. Seeing this sudden attack, Lin Dong's gaze turned cold. However, before he could react, Little Mink appeared in front of him. Without a word, he raised his finger to meet the incoming strike. Boom! The two fingers, each containing immense power, collided in midair, sending a shockwave that split the ground into dozens of massive cracks. As the shockwave spread, the attacking figure was forced to retreat, tapping their feet in midair to steady themselves before landing back on the ancient tree. The playful expression on their face was replaced with one of seriousness. Little Mink remained motionless, his handsome face now tinged with a cold glint. He shot a chilling glance at the attacker before turning to Qin Tian, a sinister grin spreading across his face. If you want to fight, I'll gladly oblige. Your so-called prestige means nothing to me. Then, with a sharp tone, he called out to Lu Bai and the others, take the Nirvana seals. I'd like to see who dares to utter another word. Lu Bai and the others were momentarily stunned by Little Mink's domineering stance. Even Su Kuei and Imo Ling, who had always seen Little Mink as somewhat lazy, were surprised to see him so aggressive, showing no regard for the Tianyuan dynasty's reputation. After a brief hesitation, they gritted their teeth and began collecting the Nirvana seals from Xue Ying and his group. As they were busy absorbing the Nirvana seals, Qin Tian's brows furrowed slightly on the ancient tree. He slowly lowered the hands that had been clasped behind his back. Seeing this, many people in the crowd grew tense. Rumor had it that Qin Tian was one of the most formidable warriors in the ancient battlefield. Was he about to make his move? Lin Dong kept his eyes fixed on Qin Tian, noticing the cold light flickering in his gaze. The Tianyuan dynasty was indeed powerful, and Qin Tian was infamous for his ruthlessness. However, if it came down to a fight, Lin Dong and his companions had no fear. Little Yin, with his imposing figure, stepped up behind Lin Dong. His black iron staff struck the ground heavily, causing the earth to tremble. The lingering bloodstains on his body from the previous battle only added to his fierce and savage aura. Black energy swirled around him, occasionally transforming into wisps of dark mist. Nearby, Little Mink's face remained expressionless. He cast a fleeting glance at Qin Tian, unimpressed. Throughout the years, many had tried to act tough in front of him, but even the strongest of the Tianyuan dynasty's warriors had no right to be arrogant before him. A mere fledgling like Qin Tian was hardly worth his time. Though he couldn't fully use the power of his heavenly demon mink form at the moment, even without it, there wasn't a single so-called genius from these dynasties that he couldn't defeat with ease. Imo Ling, Su Kuei, Su Rou, and the others, sensing the escalating tension, wasted no time in taking their positions behind Lin Dong. As for Lu Bai and his group, after a moment of internal struggle, they too resolutely gathered behind Lin Dong. They had already tied their fate to his, and if Lin Dong fell, their own futures wouldn't be much better. At this point, there was no longer any fear of offending the Tianyuan dynasty. The onlookers around the battlefield were buzzing with disbelief. None of them had expected Lin Dong's group to challenge the authority of the Tianyuan dynasty and Qin Tian, no less. That was the #1 super dynasty. These guys, Lanning muttered, furrowing her brows. She didn't particularly like Qin Tian either, and the Tianyuan dynasty and her own immortal dynasty weren't exactly on friendly terms. The two sides frequently clashed over resources. Yet, despite her feelings, even she couldn't deny the strength of Qin Tian. Qin Tian wasn't just talented, but also cunning. From what she knew, he had already caught the attention of Yuan Gate, the most powerful of the 8 great super sects in the Eastern Mystery region, making his future all but guaranteed. Of course, it wasn't surprising that Qin Tian had been noticed by Yuan Gate. The Tianyuan dynasty had long been aligned with the sect, and many of its strongest warriors held prominent positions within Yuan Gate. Qin Tian is nothing like Song Zhan, Qing Feng remarked with a grave expression. The Heavenly Demon Dynasty and the Tianyuan dynasty have close ties. Qin Tian obviously doesn't want to see Song Zhan's plans fall apart here because of Lin Dong and his group. He might have already reached the 6th Nirvana stage. Lan Ying sighed softly. The 6th stage? Qing Feng, despite being somewhat prepared for the possibility, was still shocked. The 6th Nirvana stage was enough to allow Qin Tian to look down on nearly everyone present. It looks like the Tianyuan dynasty will take the championship in this 100 dynasty war again. Qing Feng gritted his teeth in frustration. Lan Ying let out a helpless sigh. Despite the rapid progress they had made, they still couldn't catch up to Qin Tian. As the entire battlefield watched, Qin Tian, standing on the ancient tree, slowly lowered his gaze to Lin Dong and Little Mink. Xing. With a light tap of his foot, a faint golden light flashed under Qin Tian's feet, almost imperceptible to the naked eye. In fact, very few people present noticed the subtle glimmer. However, Lin Dong's sharp senses immediately picked up on it. He felt a wave of immensely destructive energy coursing through the ground, moving stealthily like a hidden dragon. What impeccable control over his power! Lin Dong's expression turned serious. The force traveling underground left no visible traces, and if it weren't for his strong spiritual perception, he wouldn't have noticed it. Just as Lin Dong was preparing to act, Little Mink casually stepped forward. His foot came down precisely on the path of the underground energy wave. Puff. A small puff of dust rose from the ground, drawing no attention. Little Mink stood still, his handsome face wearing a mocking smile as he stared directly at Qin Tian. In that silent exchange of blows, happening in the blink of an eye, no one besides Lin Dong and his companions realized that they had just clashed with Qin Tian. Qin Tian's gaze flickered slightly when his hidden attack was effortlessly neutralized by Little Mink. He smiled faintly, as if nothing had happened. Are you truly planning to go against the Tianyuan dynasty? Lin Dong shrugged and spread his hands. I think following the rules would be the better choice. He was, of course, referring to the battlefield's unwritten rule, claiming the Nirvana seals of the defeated. Rules? One of Qin Tian's followers sneered. If we crush you, do you think you'll still be able to speak of rules? Well, why don't you show me if you can? Lin Dong replied with a calm smile. What an arrogant kid. The man's eyes darkened, and he sneered coldly. Fine. I'll test whether you have the right to speak such words. As soon as the words left his mouth, the man prepared to move, but Qin Tian stretched out a hand to stop him. The subtle test earlier had made him realize that Lin Dong and his companions were not ordinary individuals. Heh, it seems there are some misunderstandings between us, Qin Tian said with a gentle smile. His gaze lingered on Lin Dong and Little Mink, as if he was trying to see through the secrets they were hiding. However, it was clear that these two were not easy to read, and his attempts at probing were fruitless. But no matter. The victor is king, and the defeated are outcasts, as they say. I won't argue that. If you aren't willing to make friends with me, Qin Tian, I won't force the issue. Perhaps we'll have a chance to exchange moves later on a top 100 dynasties mountain. Qin Tian's words left many around them stunned, as no one had expected the leader of the Tianyuan dynasty to retreat so easily. Boss! The two men behind Qin Tian were also taken aback, clearly surprised. Qin Tian waved them off with a friendly smile that seemed perfectly genuine. While the onlookers were still processing the unexpected turn of events, Lin Dong's brow furrowed slightly. He looked at Qin Tian, who remained as composed as ever, but inside, Lin Dong felt a growing sense of caution. People who wore their emotions on their sleeves weren't that dangerous. The truly dangerous ones were like Qin Tian, those who could smile no matter how furious they were inside. Qin Tian actually backed down, Qing Feng remarked in surprise. Lan Ying's eyes flickered between Lin Dong and Little Mink, but her gaze finally lingered on the spot where Little Mink had been standing. Her pupils narrowed slightly as she noticed a thumb-sized black hole on the ground. From that black hole, she could still sense a faint trace of fierce and lethal energy. So, they've already crossed blows. No wonder. Lan Ying's expression grew more serious as she glanced at Little Mink, clearly surprised that he had engaged Qin Tian in a hidden exchange without anyone noticing. With Qin Tian's retreat, the last glimmers of hope drained from Yuewen and his group, and they had no choice but to obediently hand over their Nirvana seals. "Keep an eye on that guy," Little Mink said softly as he turned to Lin Dong. Lin Dong nodded. He knew that if they hadn't noticed Qin Tian's probing attack earlier, the latter would have likely taken the opportunity to strike them down without hesitation. Qin Tian was cautious by nature, and despite his overwhelming strength, he still knew how to bide his time. People like him were truly troublesome opponents. Clang. Just as Lin Dong mentally added Qin Tian to his list of dangerous threats, a long, resonant bell toll echoed from the top of 100 Dynasty's mountain, spreading throughout the entire core region of the ancient battlefield. The bell's ancient, sonorous tone rang out, lingering in the air for a long time. Upon hearing the bell, everyone's expressions changed in an instant. All heads snapped up as they turned to gaze fervently at the summit of 100 Dynasty's mountain. At that moment, the clouds at the mountain's peak gradually parted, revealing a radiant sun suspended above it. Then, a majestic and thunderous voice boomed across the heavens and earth. 100 Dynasty's mountain is now open. Those with heaven-tier Nirvana seals, ascend the mountain at once.